Hi there, this is Jeanette Comerford. Today I'm going to share an art journal page that I created. I used a digital image from Tiddly and the background was made on some watercolor paper and I added various distress inks. So the image I used is called Vamp Me, and it comes as you see it, just the two sort of heads within that circle, which I thought was I really liked that effect, and I knew right away I was going to cut it out and put it on a really fun background. So right now I am just adding my Copic marker colors to create the skin tones. You can see all the numbers listed at the bottom of the screen. And I work from lightest to darkest and work backwards from there, and I blend in between to make sure there's a nice smooth transition between all the shades. As I was finishing off the girl's face, I sort of felt that I needed a little pop of color or something, so I added a little bit of blue, just a tiny bit there to the eyelids, and then I blended it out with my lighter shade. So I'm using the exact same colors for the neck here. And then when I was thinking of doing the little vampire, I wanted his skin to be sort of paler. I didn't want it to have that rosy hue. So I used E000 as my base. And then I just added some C1 and a tiny bit of C3 for shading. And that gave him this sort of very pale, sort of vampire-like skin. So I was pretty happy with the way that turned out. And then I just went back in and blended everything again, lighter flesh color. And then for her hair, I decided to use E31, E30, E33, sort of a light brown shade. And one of the other reasons I picked this image was because I just loved the hair. So I love coloring hair, and this image is so much fun. So you can see I'm adding that sort of base color of my E30, and I'll let that dry before adding any more. And I decided to go ahead and do the vampire hair, so I'm using C3. Again, I'm pretty much covering the entire surface, just leaving a few areas white, and that's where my highlights will end up being. And because I'm coloring in strands of hair, I'm letting the markers dry in between. So this area here of the girl's hair is dry now, so I'm going in with my next shade, which is the E31, and I am just adding long sort of feathering strokes going in the same direction of the hair and just adding all those strands in. And I like to leave some areas uncolored, and that gives you a nice highlight at the end. I'm going to do the same thing with the vampire. I've moved to a darker shade of gray. This is C5. And again, the same, I'm just putting in feathering strokes. Now I ended up here moving right out of screen, so I apologize for that. I just finished off the rest of the hair with the C5. Now I'm adding E33, and again I'm using it a little bit more sparingly. I'm not coloring over the entire area, but again you can see the definition that I'm giving the hair, and I'm just pulling these long sort of feathering strokes downward, following the direction of the hair that's already drawn there for you. So I'll let that dry, and there was a pause there. I ended up leaving and coming back. So now I'm using E39, and that really gives a nice contrast to her hair. It just was not, I didn't find it popped enough with the markers I had used, so this E39 really adds a really nice sort of contrast, and it makes everything come together. Just using my colorless blender, just sort of pushing some of that color back in. I really didn't have to do that because I will be cutting it out afterwards, but force of habit, I guess. So I'm just working that hair until it's exactly the way I want it to be. Now I'm going back to the Vampire Boy's hair, and I'm using C7. Again, just following those lines that are already drawn there, making sure to leave some areas blank. They serve as my highlight. For her dress, I wanted to make it a sort of pink-red color, so my lightest shade that I'm using right now is R30. And then I will continue with R32, just building it up a little bit. Again, leaving any area that I want lightest, I'm leaving that blank right now. I'm not coloring over it. This is my darker shade. It's the R35. Once I put that in, I'm going to blend it out. And again, sorry, I went out of frame. I tend to move my paper around a lot when I'm coloring. So here you can see I'm just blending that darker shade. And then I felt that I had lost a bit of my contrast, so I went back in with that darker color and just re-added it. Then I can blend it all the way. And then finally finish up with that R30, which is my lightest color. This is 110. That's, I think they call it Special Black. I don't use it very often, but I really felt that I needed a little bit more sort of depth and darkness to his hair, so I added that. Now I'm just coloring in that background using some shades of V Violet, so really quickly doing that. This is my mid color that I'm putting in. And these marker numbers are really close together, so they blend really quickly. You can see how fast that's blending out. And then you can just go back and forth, adding a little bit more shadow if you need it, and then just blending it out. So just move ahead and do the rest of the circle. I like printing images sometimes quite large like this. They're quick to color when they're big like this. It's a lot of fun, and it changes up how the image looks when you print them larger. So I'm just going to cut this out now with my scissors. You actually can see another image that I have all printed out ready to go for my next project. I tend to print a bunch of images on my paper, and then they're ready for me, and that way I save cardstock. So there's the image all cut out. And now for my background, I wanted to try watercoloring using a paintbrush. This is something I saw Christina Werner doing on her blog. And I'm just misting my paper with some water, and I've taped it down onto some cardboard. This is what Christina does so that her paper doesn't warp as much. And I'm just going in with some distress ink. This is, I think, Picked Preserves or something preserves. Anyways, I'll leave a link for that at the bottom of this video in the description. And then I added some chipped sapphire, and I'm just adding water to the ink and just running it over. There's no real technique here, I don't think. This is the first time I was doing it, so I was just sort of in it, was going along. So then I took my paintbrush, it was quite wet still, and I let it dry a little bit, and then I took my paintbrush and I dipped in the water and then just tapped my paintbrush over the paper, and you get all these sort of watermarks and splotches, and I just dabbed at them with a paper towel. And then I decided to fill in the rest of the area with this black soot. So you can see me just adding water in it. I have put a ink pad underneath my paper so it's tilted a little bit. That's what Christina does, so that the water sort of pools downwards. And then I just added a little more black soot there at the bottom, and then just continued to add water and to blend. And then I started to add a few more splotches with the water, and I then let it just sit and dry completely, air dry. And when it was done, I pulled off the tape. You're going to see that in a minute. And, oops, I'm still not finished, still playing with it. So now you can see I've pulled off the tape. It's completely dry, and I will just cut the background to size. And you can see when it dries, it really sort of dries more muted. It's a lot of fun to do this technique. Now I'm just going to add some adhesive to the back of my image, and my art journal page is done. I did at the end add some stickles around the side, and you'll see that in the pictures. Thanks so much for watching. A list of supplies will be found at the end of this video on YouTube, as well as on my blog, dated Friday, October 9th. Thanks for watching.